What we do is we are a deep tech company with a very strong focus on critical minerals and sustainability.
Like why Attero? Like talking about 2008, उस time पे I don't think so ऐसा कोई ecosystem था, and this is one of the toughest business to enter.
So see, in my opinion, Ankit, every business is tough, right? So tech barrier being high was actually good for us. That is something that we wanted to have.
Why this is important to collect that e-waste, and why does this company matters for India a lot?
So that's a pretty nuanced question, Ankit, in my opinion, right? That India today is a net importer of almost every single metal.
Right.
Start from gold, silver, palladium, platinum, go down to copper, by the way, very important metal today, then go down to rare earths, neodymium, dysprosium, all of the metals we import.
In future, what are the things that we can expect from this?
In our opinion, and in my personal opinion, in the next few years, using recycling as a key common sector, India can meet between 30 to 75% of its metal requirements, depending on the metal that you talk about.
So talking about the current scale of Attero, the production capacity and the kind of you are collecting the scrap, and if you can talk about the scale.
See, we are still a privately held company. From a scale perspective, we are growing 100% year on year.
Right.
Over the last few years. We are profitable on a cash flow basis. Not only profitable, our EBITDA for the year is probably more than what we have raised so far.
Your biggest plant is in Roorkee, I think.
So we have a plant in Roorkee, we have a plant in Pune, we have a plant in Ringas, Jaipur, and in plans to open up one in Bangalore and Faridabad.
India has resources, but we don't have that processing part. I think 70 to 80% of the rare earth or critical minerals are processed in China.
What have we done in IT? We become the IT backbone of the world, right? In critical minerals, we should be able to defeat China's hegemony and become the critical minerals capital of the world.
Are you getting good support from the government on this?
I think the government policies are pretty proactive, Ankit.
Okay.
Obviously, dil mange more. when do we say no, right? But given the constraints of where India lies, what the government has done from a policy perspective is pretty forward-looking.
Right. I think government should act as a catalyst for entrepreneurs and builders like you. Now, talking about road ahead, what is next?
So, future is always very exciting.
Okay.
We are as pumped as day zero or day one for us here.
Okay.
Next is we want to make sure that India becomes a leader in critical minerals in the world.
And any plans of IPO, going public? Or?
Yes, we do plan to go public at the right point in time, hopefully in the next couple of years.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rocket Media. Today I am with Nitin Gupta. He is co-founder and CEO of Attero, one of India's largest e-waste and battery recycling companies. Swagat Nitin, how are you?
Thank you, Ankit. Thanks for having me on the show. Just a small correction. I don't like to begin with corrections. India's largest critical minerals company.
Oh, okay.
E-waste and lithium-ion batteries are part of it, but so yeah, we can go ahead, Ankit.
Okay, so you started with e-waste and these things, but you are also transitioning into...
So essentially, Ankit, think of it like this. E-waste is one set of inputs for the company, right? What we do is we are a deep tech company with a very strong focus on critical minerals and sustainability.
Okay.
Right now, as a company, our job is to increase our input funnel, take in as many input items that we can recycle or refine. We started with e-waste, added lithium-ion batteries, added magnets. On the output side, when we started recycling electronic waste, we took out 7+ metals in pure form: gold, silver, copper, aluminum, iron, and tin. Then we expanded that to 22+ metals, because from batteries we get cobalt, lithium carbonate, nickel, graphite, manganese. From magnets we get neodymium, dysprosium, and other rare earths. And from all other kinds of e-waste like solar panels and others, we started to get other metals as well, right? So both on the input side and the output side, the funnel is increasing.
Oh, great. Okay, so thank you for correcting me, and we'll talk about these things. But prior to deep diving into your company and a lot of things, I would love to know about your journey prior to founding Attero.
So I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering from IIT Delhi. Worked in India and US as a signal processing engineer, basically designing chipsets for mobile phone and home access devices. There was always this itch that you have to do something from a business standpoint. Did my MBA from New York University Stern School of Business and came back to India to start Attero. The sort of key motivating factor at that point in time was that, at least in my opinion, India was a very fast growing country, and sort of recycling and critical minerals sort of resonated very well. It was a white space where technology could play an arbitrage role. And at least Rohan and I, my co-founder, decided that if we were to build something in India with technology as the cornerstone of all of this, then we achieve sustainability aspects or impact that we intend to do, and we build a big business on top of it. Right? So came back to India, started Attero with Rohan, and then it's been a sort of a journey.
But like why Attero? Like talking about 2008, उस time पे I don't think so ऐसा कोई ecosystem था, and this is one of the toughest business to enter. Like that the tech barrier is high. So why this vertical?
So see, in my opinion, Ankit, every business is tough, right? Some business might be tough from an operational standpoint. Some business, like you rightly said, have a high tech barrier there, right? Fundamentally, the 2 or 3 ethos that when we started Attero we had, and they run through today also, is that we wanted to really create a deep tech company out of the country. So tech barrier being high was actually good for us. That is something that we wanted to have, right? Second is, anything that we do should have a proper impact from a society standpoint. Waste recycling or critical minerals fit into that objective as well. And third, it should be able to scale. When we started, frankly, we didn't know that it'll scale, but now we can say it scaled pretty beautifully looking back in hindsight.
So what was your insight, like the initial point where you guys started with these things?
That anything to do in deep tech is tough. It's not easy. But many insights. Starting from the fact that cultural shock of starting a manufacturing deep tech business in India, when you've never done that. Simple things like the factory inspector would say, boss, I'll need so much money to sort of give you the sort of power connection and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So starting from that cultural shock to the entire journey, there are many insights across.
And talking about it, in 2008, there were no regulations, there was no ecosystem and no supply chain. So what were the initial years were used to look like, 2-3 years? Like how did you exactly started and everything on track? How did you manage those things?
So see, we were fairly young, right? Green behind the years. So everything seemed like an opportunity, not a challenge. So it seemed very fun. And even today, at least we try to have the same enthusiasm to work. The challenges even today, the challenges and the nature of challenges has changed. Our appreciation of those challenges has grown better, but our enthusiasm to solve that has not diminished, right? So the same enthusiasm we had in 2008 till 2012, we carry forward even today. Back in those days, obviously there was no supply chain, like you rightly said. We built the supply chain. We have conceptualized the supply chain. We have built the supply chain, starting with SellSmart, which is the digital D2C platform, which enables consumers like you and me to sell their electronic waste and other scrap at the best price possible from the convenience of your home, right? To Metal Mandi, which is a B2B scrap aggregator platform, enables the real actors in the supply chain, the first level kabadiwala or the first mile collector, to the first level aggregator who do bulk of the work to get the maximum amount of money from collection and take out the middleman, which is a larger aggregator, right? At the back end of both of these, there is a significant AI-based pricing engine that's running. So there's a lot of deep tech that's gone into supply chain improvements and organization as well. So when we saw a challenge, we sort of treated it as an opportunity and tried to solve it using technology.
No, but like you, SalesMart and Metal Mandi started very recently.
Yes.
But talking about the early years, उस time पे like if you explain to anybody that I am doing this e-waste, they will call you just a kabadi wala or these kind of things.
Absolutely.
So if you have to explain somebody at that point of time, okay, I am doing this and this is a deep tech company, even to your parents or your colleagues. So what was that change
I
and
used to got that reaction a lot. Right?
Okay.
But I think that's sort of deeply ingrained. It doesn't matter what people say.
Okay,
right?
And why this is important to collect that e-waste, and why does this company matters for India a lot?
So that's a pretty nuanced question, Ankit, in my opinion, right? So first, if you look at it from a pure society standpoint, okay? Today, if I describe the waste collection value stream to you or supply chain to you, the kabadiwala who comes to your house or my house to collect scrap, he is a daily wage earner, right? you'll not see any females in the Kavadiala domain. Right? Now, I'm using these words very carefully, by the way. This guy will sell the scrap to a local aggregator. Local aggregator is funding working capital, nothing else, right? All cash based. The local aggregator, after collecting a certain volume, sells it to a larger aggregator. Larger aggregator is also funding working capital. The larger aggregator then sells this stuff, for example, the printed circuit board out of a PCB or any other electronic device gets sold to traders in Selampur and other places where women and children are involved in the last mile processing. So first is all male, the last mile is all women and children, right?
In dismantling the products.
Not only dismantling, in
organizing.
chemical refining. So they use, for example, if you look at this cell phone,
Right.
this has a printed circuit board in it, right? It's got a SIM card. The SIM card has a plating of gold. To extract it, if you put it in a pond of cyanide and sulfuric acid, cyanide has a chemical, has a very good property. In a mixed metal input, it will only extract gold. So it forms a complex called AuCy++.
Okay.
Right? It does not touch any other metal. So you do selective extraction, right? Then you sort of take this thing, you burn it to the carbon ball, and you got something called gold doré or impure gold. Then you use aqua regia to refine it. Okay? The cyanide in sulfuric acid solution, when it is pregnant, it is dumped in the nearby water stream. Okay?
Okay.
Now, just a simple thought experiment. If you want to buy cyanide today, please go and find out if you can buy. You need a government license to buy. But the informal sector in India was able to get cyanide, extract these metals, and dump it like that. Right? So something is not right in the ecosystem. Stuff that is not plated in gold, for example, the printed circuit board, it's got Intel ICs or AMD ICs on top of it, right? They have small strands of gold and silver within them. Those things are actually smelted in a coal-based furnace with lead as a collector metal. I'll come back to collector metal in a second. Just hold that thought with me. When you do that, lead is an extremely polluting metal, right? Lead fumes are obnoxious from a cancer perspective and other sort of respiratory diseases angle as well. And coal-based furnace is among the worst kind of fuel to use from a smelting angle. That has its own pollution problem.
Right.
So that particular activity led to a lot of air pollution. The cyanide and sulfuric acid solution led to a lot of water pollution. You're with me right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm with you.
Now let's look at the cable which is connecting one of these stands, right? That cable has copper in it. To extract copper, children basically take knife and slice it.
Right.
Right? Extremely hazardous. So this entire activity recycling was being done, but in an extremely rudimentary fashion, leading to at least tens of billions of dollars in environmental cost to the country. Air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, leading to at least tens of billions of dollars of social cost to the country. The average lifespan of people working in the informal illegal sector was less than 27 years. You can look at health cost, you can look at work compensation cost, you can look at all kinds of costs there, right? And then the amount of metals recovered were at least lowered by 30%. So there is this factor that you're not recovering the entire amount of metals that are present in there, and a lot of it is getting wasted still, right? Plus the entire economy was cash based,
Right.
end to end. So no taxation, and cash comes with its own challenges in terms of where it is getting used, what are the real effects it's causing to the society. So one gamut of problems that the sector had was this entire supply chain was distorted. First, the initial collectors and the last mile recyclers, they were not getting bulk of the value. Bulk of the value is being captured by the middlemen. Second, highly polluting activity. Third, all cash based. Fourth, low recovery. Right? So that's one aspect of illegal recycling. The second aspect from a, let's say, macro or geopolitical perspective is that India today is a net importer of almost every single metal.
Right.
Start from gold, silver, palladium, platinum, go down to copper, by the way, very important metal today, aluminum, tin, then go to battery materials, lithium carbonate, cobalt, hydroxide, or even graphite, manganese, all of these. Then go down to rare earths, neodymium, dysprosium, all of the metals we import.
Exactly. So I was seeing this graph of India and China trade, and we have some $100 billion deficit with China.
Yeah.
And what we mostly import is electronic components and these
Yes.
items. So I think definitely you're spot on this.
So essentially, this scrap recycling solves two challenges. One is, can we sort of make the supply chain more formal and organized? Right?
Right.
So no pollution occurs. Secondly, can we treat that as a resource to make sure that we can lower the import requirements of the country and be Atmanirbhar in some aspect or not? Right? Those are
Right.
two big problem statements that the industry needs to solve and is trying to solve.
Great. Like you took me into a different direction. So I didn't had a lot of idea about that first part.
Yeah.
Like, that pollution, sustainability and that part a lot. So talking about that part, like, most of the formal is, most of the sectors, I think, informal or not organized. If we talk about these kabadi walas, like, they collect scrap and there is no proper transportation with care, like, batteries and these things they are carrying without any safety measure or precautions, then the processing and everything. So the idea was to organize the sector. So right, you started organizing the sector. So
Yes.
what is the situation now, and like, in future, what are the things that we can expect from this?
So let me go from a, let's say, gloom scenario of past
Okay.
to an extremely optimistic future, right? In our opinion and in my personal opinion, in the next few years, using recycling as a key common sector, India can meet between 30 to 75% of its metal requirements, depending on the metal that you talk about.
Can you put a, like, any number to it, economic number?
I'll put a number to that.
Okay.
So, for example, for copper,
Okay.
right? By recycling and making sure that the entire supply chain is formalized, we can meet 30% of copper demand. That is, the import can come down by 30%. So, assume that $100 billion import, right?
Right.
Assume that, let's say, 70% of that is in some form or shape raw materials. So, $70 billion. Take an average of 30 to 75%, that is 52 odd percent. So, you're talking about a $35 billion impact
Right.
that this sector can have potentially. And that's just a financial impact. Look at the non-financial impact. We are no longer reliant or beholden to China, or we are no longer reliant or beholden to any other country from a geopolitical perspective that they can, at their whims and fancies, tell us what to do and what not to do. Okay? If you talk about rare earths, by recycling, our endeavor is that India can meet at least 75% of its demand. Okay?
Right.
And let me sort of take you a step back and logically explain to you why this thought process makes a lot of sense. See, at the end of the day, at least the technology that we have developed, by the way, we have 47 granted global patents.
Yeah, I looked into that.
Yeah, on various recycling tech that we've developed. And these patents are across US, Europe, and Asia, including China, by the way, and more than 200 filed for. So our tech for recycling today is best in class globally, not only on recovery efficiency, for example, the amount of metals that we recover, what is compared to what is contained in the input, but also to capex per ton, opex per ton, and the kind of materials that we can refine or recycle. So our recovery efficiency is broadly around 20% higher than anybody else in the world. Our capex per ton is 40% lower. Our opex is 30% lower, and our TAM is significantly better compared to anybody else in the world, right? So that's the tech advantage. Now, using the tech advantage that's already there, if we can formalize the entire scrap industry, there is significant advantages that we can bring to the table.
Right. And Nitin, talking about, like, the best part is, like, when any metal or component is entering India, it is going to stay in India only.
Yeah.
So this circular economy, like, if we like, if we organize this better and if we can recycle this better, I think we can do wonders with
Absolutely.
critical minerals.
Absolutely.
So like, talking about this, like, ki India is one of the, I think, third largest producer of e-waste, and with, like, millions of tons of metric, like, per year. So like, India also has a lot of resources, but we are unable to use those resources. So what role Attero can play, like, in between, bridging that gap?
So again, multiple parts to the question, Ankit, in my opinion. But India today generates roughly around 4 million tons of electronic waste annually, growing at 15% year on year, right? And with efficient technology, like you rightly pointed out, the metals that are contained in any product, whether it's electronic waste or lithium-ion batteries or magnets, they're not going waste. Metals can be recycled infinite number of times, right? Without any loss. There is no
And they're
loss.
very high yield as compared to mining.
Yeah, high yield compared to high content compared to
Content,
mining,
right.
right? So they can be recycled as many times, infinite number of times without a loss. So that essentially comes, so the problem comes down to two core pillars. One is how do you efficiently collect, and second is how do you efficiently process.
Okay.
That's the only key thing to making this sector. At Attero, we first solved the processing problem. We said, guys, we are tech guys. let us first solve the technology problem. Can we make the best recycling technology in the world? So we first solved the technology problem. We established technology plans which are globally the best. Then we said, now this is done. Can we solve the supply chain problem? That's how we solve the supply chain problem through SellSmart and Metal Monday.
Right.
Right?
So initially your two first years were focused on R&D, then eventually you shifted to supply chain and these things. So talking about the current scale of Attero, like, the production capacity and the kind of, like, you are collecting the scrap, and if you can talk about the scale.
See, we are still a privately held company. From a scale perspective, we are growing 100% year on year over the last few years. We are profitable on a cash flow basis, not only adjusted EBITDA or PAT, on a cash flow basis.
I saw the company's history and you have raised a very low amount in terms of funding.
Yeah. So our return on capital employed is pretty high. Right? So the total amount of capital that we've raised so far, if you were to talk about rupee terms, is 145 odd crores. In dollar terms, at today's price is roughly around $15 odd million.
It's very less. Like if you look at the software industry, the kind of funds that people raise, and you guys are profitable.
Absolutely. Not only profitable, our EBITDA for the year is probably more than what we have raised so far.
Right.
So that will give you some sense of scale. Okay. In terms of, let's say, metal output, today we, on a run rate basis, we would be doing roughly around 2,000 to 3,000 tons of copper a month. We'll be doing roughly around 10 to 15 kgs of gold a month. We'll be doing roughly around 100 to 200 tons of cobalt in annum. We'll be doing between 75 to 150 tons of lithium carbonate in annum. We'll be broadly doing around 7,000 odd tons of iron a month, 10,000 odd tons of iron a month. We'll be doing roughly around 300 to 500 tons of aluminum a month, and so on and so forth. And this is doubling every year.
Wow.
Okay.
And like, I'm just curious to know about the value chain, like, how everything works, like, from collecting e-waste to processing, and then who you are selling to. So who are your consumers? If you can, like, take me through this entire process.
Sure. See, processing chain is fairly simple.
Okay.
Till last year, we were buying from the larger aggregators. Okay. 80% of our input was coming from the larger aggregators in the supply chain that I talked about earlier, saying electronic waste is generated at consumers or B2B. B2B is production waste.
Right.
Let's say Samsung's production facility or LG's production facility or anybody else, and obviously corporates, right? It is collected by the kabadiwala, goes to the first level aggregator, goes to the second level aggregator. So till last year, 80% of our input was coming from the second level aggregator.
Okay.
And 20% of input is coming directly from corporates, right? Then when we started SellSmart and Metal Mandi, today, 10% of our input on a run rate basis is coming from SellSmart, which directly picks up from consumers.
And within, I think, 2 years?
Within not even 2 years, 6 months.
Okay.
6 months of operations, right? And around 70% of our input comes from Metal Mandi, and the balance 20% comes from corporates. Now, if you look at this sort of supply chain map, SellSmart is essentially going to the consumer, saying, guys, we'll give you the best price, we'll give you convenience, and also data security. Don't forget that, right? Because today, in all our devices that we use, there's significant amount of data. Now, how do we protect the data, or how are we so sure that if I give up my cell phone or my laptop or any other device, my data is not getting compromised?
Right.
Is extremely critical, right? SellSmart gives you that peace of mind. Okay, forget about money, but that's the most critical peace of mind. Metal Mandi, on the other hand, is targeting the first level aggregator, saying you don't need to be fleeced by the larger aggregator, right? We'll give you the best prices possible. And now, just from a comparison standpoint, typically as a consumer, if you dispose of your air conditioner, the kabadiwala will pay you $2,500 on an average.
Okay.
SellSmart pays you 6,000. That's the scale difference that is there.
More than double.
That comes back to technology and operational savings. Right? Significant. Plus the convenience, plus the data security. So today, 10% on a run rate basis coming from SellSmart. SellSmart is doing roughly around 1,000 orders a day, roughly around 60 kgs per order, active across 19 cities in the country, doubling quarter on quarter. Metal Mandi is doing 70% plus. Metal Mandi is present across 25 cities in the country, going to 100 now. And it's obviously doubling every quarter as well. Right? So that's where we are.
Great. And once
in terms of customers, sorry, forgot to add that. What we produce is pure gold that goes back to the jewelry industry largely. Like 99.9% pure gold. What we produce is 99.7% plus pure copper, which goes back to people who make copper cables or copper products, right? Vedantas, Hindalcos, Adani Copper, the likes of those. What we produce is 99% pure aluminum that goes back to people who make aluminum wires again, and so on and so forth.
Right. So, wow. So firstly, like, you are producing gold, copper and these things. So how much of these processes are economically viable? Like, you have put a lot of money into R&D. So if you can take us through R&D at Attero and the margins that you are having with your patents and technologies.
Okay, so a couple of things, right? I'll not talk about margins.
Okay.
But I understand the question.
Okay.
I understand the audience. So I'll try and give you as much insight as possible.
Okay.
Essentially, from our perspective, the sort of the KRA or the job of the R&D division or the department of the scientists working there is to make sure that they're not concerned about margins. R&D should never be concerned about margins.
Okay.
R&D's job is not to make money. Okay. Their job is to make a product or a process which is the best in the world for a commercial application that is relevant to the company today. That's their job. They're never under margin pressure. In fact, if you go speak to our R&D folks, they'll tell you they don't care about margins, right? What they do is figure out what is the next thing in recycling they need to address, right? For example, today if you go to our R&D lab, what are we working on? We are working on sodium-ion batteries, for example. They're not commercially available today, but
Right.
they will come sometime in the future. Our recycling process should be ready before that. Okay. What are they working on? They're working on electrolyte recycling. So if you look at again this battery cell, there's a battery in this, right? It's a single cell battery. If you open up your laptop, it's got 8 or 10 cells packed together. Open up your EV, it's got 400 to 1000 cells packed together. The fundamental unit is a cell. Open up the cell, you'll see an anode which is 99% graphite and 1%
Right.
silica, right? By the way, that's going to 90% graphite and 10% silica, largely because anode efficiency improves with higher silica. Challenge is that going from 1% silica to 10% silica requires nanoparticle doping, which is a tough activity to do. Okay. So after the anode, there is a very thin foil of aluminum called the anode separator, followed by an electrolyte, which is LiFePO6 chemical formula, followed by a cathode, which is like copper foil, and then the cathode. So the battery chemistry is all contained in the cathode. So if you look at the Tata Nexon EV car, it has got an LFP battery chemistry. That's the cathode. Cathode has lithium, iron and phosphorus. No
Right.
cobalt, no nickel. If you look at the Tata, let's say if you look at Hyundai Kona car, it's got NMC 811 or 622. That means the cathode has 60% nickel, 20% manganese, 20% cobalt, or 80% nickel, 10% manganese, 10% cobalt, right? This cell phone has an LCO battery chemistry, so the cobalt content is higher. So that's the battery composition, right? This electrolyte is a very interesting thing, right? We have been able to recover the electrolyte, but we now want to make it usable back. So that's another project in the R&D department.
Okay.
Okay, and stuff like this.
Wow. So first of all, I loved that attitude, like, ki looking at R&D and science and tech as investment, not expenses.
Absolutely.
Which is very much needed in deep tech, in a deep tech company like yours.
Correct.
So if you can also talk about, like, some of the fundamental breakthroughs about your patents for layman, like, in simple terms.
Sure. No, absolutely. So, see, there's wide range. Okay. So let's look at a few. Let's take one from electronic waste and one from batteries and one from, let's say, mix, right?
Okay.
So electronic waste, let's talk about printed circuit boards, right? Printed circuit board is the brain of any electronic device, right? Now, from a composition standpoint, it's a multi-layer copper board with plastics in between, 7-layer copper board with plastics in between. Then components like your inductor, capacitor are populated on top of it. That's how a printed circuit board looks, okay? In our, so the informal sector, like I told you, what they did was they took this board and smelted it with a coal-based furnace using lead as a collector metal. Okay. Compare that to another company in Europe called Umicore. Okay. Umicore started doing PCB recycling back in 2008. Umicore is a $20 billion odd copper company. Their main business was taking copper ore and making copper products. They decided that the margin of the business is low, so somehow they need to improve the margin. So they decided to input, along with the copper ore, printed circuit boards, right? So copper became a collector metal. Now what is a collector metal? All of this will be relevant from pattern perspective.
right.
Okay. So a collector metal is, if you look at a smelter from a layman angle is like your microwave oven, but on an industrial scale.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So smelter has one input, which is the product you're feeding, which is a mixed metal product. The intent is to recover the metal of interest. Okay. And the smelter has two outputs. One is metal phase and the second is slag. Slag is technically lost, non-usable. Okay. So every metallurgist's agenda is to maximize the metal of interest in the metal phase. Makes sense?
Right.
To do that, a metallurgist has 3 or 4 things in his or her control. One is what is the operating conditions of the smelter. For example, the smelter at Umicore runs between 1700 to 2000 degrees Celsius. The coal-based furnace that the informal sector uses in India is around 1200 degrees Celsius, right? Second is sort of what is the collector metal that you're using. Now, collector metal by definition means that you add it to the input feedstock. It helps collect the metal of interest in the metal phase, right? There are 6 collector metals in the world: silver, nickel, copper, copper, lead, and iron. Okay, iron is a sort of a useless collector metal, so nobody uses it. But these are in terms of price per kg. Right now, nobody would put silver to extract gold itself. Process becomes economically unviable. Right? Informal sector in India used lead. Umicore used copper. Clear? The ratio of collector metal matter, Umicore uses 1:10 times. So for every ton of printed circuit board they're feeding into the smelter, they use 10 times of copper. Okay, so 1 ton of PCB required 11 tons of input.
Okay.
How does it matter? It matters because your capex per ton increases significantly. Suddenly you need to have a bigger furnace, you need to have a bigger working area, you need to have bigger pollution control equipment, everything scales. Right? So minimal viable plant capacity for 1 ton of PCB needs to be 11 tons. The informal sector in India used 1:5 of lead. Okay, but the challenge is lead is a highly obnoxious metal from a pollution standpoint. One of the patents that Attero has enables us to have this collector metal as 1:0.45 instead of 1:5 or 1:10.
0.45.
0.45. Okay, that's one of the patents we have. Okay, significant innovation from that standpoint that enabled us to have a minimal viable plant capacity of 5,000 tons per annum. Umicore's minimal viable plant capacity is 100,000 tons per annum. That enabled us to set up PCB recycling in a country like India without having the formal supply chain. Otherwise, where would we collect 100,000 tons of PCB initially? Right? So that was the economic ramifications of this patent.
Wow.
Okay.
And this is completely indigenously
100%.
by our engineers.
100%, all of it. Every single bit of it. Okay. Now let's talk about battery recycling. So battery recycling, again from a process standpoint, these cells that I described to you, they first go through a shredding process, followed by some sort of density separation. So there are 2 outputs. One is your, let's say, separator materials and binder materials, or simple English, it contains copper, aluminum, iron, and plastic. And the second is in industry parlance known as black mass. It's actually a black powder.
You are the only company in India to produce that.
To refine it.
Oh, refine it. Okay.
So black mass basically is your cathode active materials and anode materials. Simple English, it contains cobalt, lithium, nickel, graphite, manganese, and little bit of copper and aluminum. This is a mechanical recycling process, fairly easy to do. This black mass then needs to be refined. Technically speaking, you can either take a metallurgical route or you can take a chemical route. Metallurgical route, the challenges are lithium has a very low melting point, gets lost in slag, right? Manganese gets lost in slag. So your recovery efficiencies are very poor. Okay. Chemically, Attero was the first company to actually take out lithium carbonate at more than 95% efficiency, right? Now, how did we do that? Lithium carbonate essentially comes out in our process. So if you look at by a process called precipitation, simple process. If this is a bottle of water, assume this got salt mixed in it. Now you are saying, boss, I don't like salt. I don't like the smell or taste of salt. I want sugar. So why don't you displace salt with sugar? Okay. That's the process that we use for extracting lithium carbonate. Now, when you displace salt with sugar, they have displacement limits, chemical theoretical limits, right? Lithium carbonate is getting displaced with a sulfate ion, which has limits of 50%. So nobody in the world was able to get more than 50% of lithium carbonate. Technically, it was impossible to do. One of the patents that we have is we modified the conditions of the precipitation process and took it to 95% plus.
Wow.
Okay.
And wow, the kind of things that you are mentioning, like, a lot of things are surprising me a lot, because mostly people think that India is just a follower of Western science, but this is some serious work being done here.
Lot of serious chemical and metallurgical stuff, and obviously supply chain, right? So third patent, like not yet granted in the sort of going.
It is on supply chain?
It's on supply chain. AI.
Okay, so this is very interesting, like a software layer on the top of a hardware company.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially,
Please go ahead.
so if you look at it, right? Compressor.
Okay.
Compressor can have a copper winding or an aluminum winding. Depending on which winding it has, the price of a compressor will change, right? It is like 2x difference. For an aluminum winding compressor, let's assume it's 50 rupees a kg, copper will be 100. So when you're procuring in bulk, so we need to make sure that fraud detection is in place. Otherwise, you pay for 100 and you get 50 and you're screwed, okay? So we built an image processing tool, which by looking at photographs, can tell you with a 99.9% accuracy, it's a copper compressor or an aluminum compressor without opening it up. Okay?
Just by image.
Just by pure image processing,
Okay.
nothing else. And not X-ray image, outer image.
So how did you train it? And
Also, lots of data, because we've been doing this recycling for so many years now.
so already had data.
We already had a lot of data, but within that data, to parse that algorithm to say what are the key nuances of that image, what are the first differentiating factors, right? And then how do you train the model,
Right.
right? That significant AI layer that we built there.
Great. What is the strength of your R&D team?
Right now around 20 people.
20 people? Just 20?
Yeah.
Wow. And are you also, like, one of the thing, like, which is a very problem in India is like, people work in silos.
Yeah.
If you talk about industry, academia, and these kind of institutions. So are you like collaborating with any institutions, academia, or like,
We do bunch of work with almost every IIT.
Okay.
IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, IIT Chennai,
Right.
IIT Roorkee. When we
Right.
started out in Roorkee, as a small company, we didn't have the resources to buy all high-tech equipment.
Right.
So we collaborated with IIT Roorkee. We used to send our samples for them for testing. They had a beautiful chemical metallurgical lab, one centralized lab where you could find all equipment. So we milked that resource a lot. We used that resource a lot. Then we have a project going on with IIT Delhi where they've taken our recycled lithium carbonate, graphite, cobalt, and actually made a battery cell and compared the performance of that recycled material made cell with virgin material made cell, right? Similarly, another project going on with other IITs and so on and so forth.
Your biggest plant is in Roorkee, I think.
So we have a plant in Roorkee, we have a plant in Pune, we have a plant in Ringas, Jaipur, and in plans to open up one in Bangalore and Faridabad.
Okay, great. And now coming to, like, this mission of all yours, like, sustainability part and this mission of government, like, key to get that net emission zero. We can talk about that, like, advantage of recycling or mining. Like, many people say that, okay, India also has resources. Like, there are certain advantage to it in terms of carbon emission and lot of things. If you can talk about that.
Again, fairly nuanced question, right? So
Okay.
my position, or at least our position, is fairly simple. Recycling obviously is a better activity to do from a net zero perspective.
Okay.
Right? Example for us, we did a recent study on GHG emissions.
Right.
So the metals that we take about, the 22 plus metals that I said, each one of them, we compared the entire GHG emission starting from, let's say, pickup till recycling to output, and compared that to mining globally in terms of data, right? So the GHG emissions of various metals sort of extracted at Attero is 40% to 99% lower compared to mining. For, let's say, example, lithium carbonate, it's 99% lower in Attero's case compared to mining. For nickel, it's 60% lower. For copper, it's 65% lower, and so on and so forth. But all metals, for us, extracted at Attero are lower by 40 to 99% compared to mining. So significant GHG savings from that angle. But does that mean that India should not do mining at all?
Yeah.
That's I would say, if I can use the word, ridiculous
India
argument.
has resources, But like we don't have that processing part. Like I think 70 to 80% of the rare earth or critical minerals are processed in China.
Yes.
So we don't have that capacity or technologies to do
So
that.
exactly my point there. So essentially, if you look at a mine, right, Ankit. So from a mining perspective, there are two broad processing technologies that are used. One is mechanical processing that happens in situ or where the mine is. Essentially, you take a bunch of dirt or earth and you try to sort of make it more pure from a metals perspective, right? Only thing you're trying to do is using either sieving or sort of other mechanical separation methods, trying to upscale the metal content in that powder. Okay.
Right.
Then that particular intermediate output needs to be refined using either chemical methodology or a metallurgical process. As you rightly said, 80% plus refining happens in China. Right?
We are dependent,
on China.
them. Like if
So-
any day that supply chain disrupt, like
Yeah.
what will happen?
Absolutely. But the good part is that the recycling stream also goes through the same thing. So what I described to you after black mass, assume that in the battery refining unit that we have, black mass is one input. The other input can be the intermediate output that comes from a mine. It will go through the same process. The process is exactly the same.
So in like you are saying in future, like you can
Not in the
also-
future. For example, when the government of India said that the lithium mine in JNK had a
Right.
225 ppm of lithium carbonate in there, we actually took a sample, we processed it, and we were able to take out 202 ppm of pure lithium carbonate. Not in the future, right? Today. That's the same process. So we did not be dependent on China for our refining needs. We need to scale this and become the refiners of the world. What have we done in telecom, right? We have leapfrog technology, right? What have we done in IT? We become the IT backbone of the world, right?
Right.
In critical minerals, we should be able to defeat China's hegemony and become the critical minerals capital of the world.
Yep. I think other countries are also exploring that option. Who is China plus one?
Yes, China plus one is India.
Right.
That's it. That's the way we to look at the sector.
Yeah, like if we look at the whole landscape, I think these stocks are like hot talk of the town. Like even in bilateral trades, we can see that like critical minerals is there in
Yeah.
many of the bilateral deals.
Yeah.
And if we have to compete with China, like we also need collaborations with other countries, or like by also at the same time maintaining that like our IP and everything. So are you also like collaborating with any other international bodies or any operations in other countries too?
So we're looking to set up a plant in Europe. We're looking to do that in the US. So
Okay.
we are actively involved. We do work with a lot of organizations outside India as well, right? But I fundamentally believe that the market dynamics, the geopolitical dynamics, and the industry is ripe for India being the global leader in critical minerals in the world.
Okay. And like are you getting good support from the government on this?
I think the government policies are pretty proactive, Ankit.
Okay.
Obviously, dil mange more. when do we say no, right? But given the constraints of where India lies, we are not a very rich country today. We will get there one day. We are not a very rich country today, right? So within those constraints, what the government has done from a policy perspective is pretty forward-looking, right? Starting from the fact that the government of India introduced extended producer responsibility or EPR across various waste streams, and they've been making this EPR legislation stronger and stronger by the year. Originally, EPR came in 2013. It was voluntarily compliance. Then they made it mandatory in 2017. Then they gave it to customs for checking. So you cannot import a component or a sub-assembly or a product in the country without EPR compliance. And in parallel, they introduced this for plastic, they introduced this for tires, and then it was introduced for batteries, for non-ferrous materials as well, like
And
copper and
recently
aluminum.
a new scheme, I think 7,000-8,000 crore fund for
That is different. So
Okay.
this EPR scheme is under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This is to basically say that the OEMs like Samsung, HP, Dell should be responsible for collecting electronic waste and making sure it's scientifically recycled. So the informal sector is discouraged and the formal sector is sort of favored from that angle.
You are also using this to incentivize like your partners in meeting their EPR targets. I think.
Yeah, so that's the policy, right? So this policy has been pretty forward-looking, and the government has been pretty proactive in implementing it as well. So this is under MOFCC. Now the policy that you're talking about is under MHI.
Okay.
which basically says that, listen, India needs to have at least 6,000 metric ton per annum of magnet production. Okay. Now, to do that, they've actually come out with a subsidy policy of 7,800 crores, which is looking to give a significant high amount of PLI subsidy on per ton of magnet produced, almost equivalent to, let's say, 50% of revenue, right? Which is pretty good thing. The third one is National Critical Minerals Mission, which is housed in the Ministry of Mines. Under the budget, it was 16,000 crores by the Government of India and a matching contribution of PSUs. Within that, they've already allocated 1,500 crores for recycling. So the policies of the Government of India are pretty proactive. Of course, like I said, we want more and more and more, but it will happen.
Okay, but are things too bureaucratic in that sense?
It will always
Process is
be.
slow?
It's there in every country,
Okay.
right? No need to unnecessarily pick on India.
Yeah.
I think we've done a pretty good job of where policy
But,
stand.
okay, so you're getting good support from the government, but still any policy that you would like to change, like maybe GST reduction on battery scrap or
So, see,
custom support?
Absolutely. So there are obviously our wish list as well that we keep talking to the government about. We obviously want them to enforce the EPR minimum regulation or EPR policies more stringently, right? We obviously want them to continue to audit recyclers to make sure that the bad apples are taken out of the system so that the entire system stays clean and neat. We want traceability to be encouraged. For example, what CellSmart is doing and Metal Mandi is doing, make the entire supply chain traceable and transparent. So there should be some encouragement for that as well.
I heard about something called battery Aadhaar.
Yeah, so that's the traceable part of it.
Yeah, I
So
think
that is coming through
okay.
Metal Mandi also.
Oh, okay.
It's a blockchain based application to say that, let's say, when you sell a battery, from the time it's manufactured to the time it's disposed of, how do you track it?
Okay, so end to end, like, you can track the...
Absolutely end to end.
Okay.
So again, through the application that we've already built, all of that is happening. Government needs to encourage it in some form or fashion, right? Third is the entire scrap supply chain that's there across all metals. There needs to be a GST rate reduction there. 18% is what is charged today apart from plastics.
For battery scrap?
For everything.
Okay.
For all scrap, right? It needs to come down to 5. The logic being that scrap is a second-hand item. One time GST has already been paid, right? And because the scrap supply chain earlier was all cash-based, by keeping the GST high, there are leakages in the system, right? So whether you talk to Tata Steel, which procures a lot of iron, or you talk to Hindalco guys, which are now purchasing PCBs or copper, or you talk to Adani guys, or you talk to any of these guys working in the secondary metal space, the consistent policy feedback is that these sort of GST rates need to come down to plug the leakages in the scrap supply chain. Right, so 18% should come down to 5, if not lower. That's the second demand that is there. Third is, in association with that, bring in reverse charge mechanism. As a formal sector player, if Attero collects scrap from a scrap vendor and pays GST to the Government of India, I don't need to check whether you're paid or not. My compliance, I'll take care of. Right? Because at some point in time in the supply chain, the informal is meeting the formal. Right? So reverse charge mechanism, GST rate reduction, on top of it, some sort of traceable and transparent supply chain encouragement are some of the demands that the government is already aware of.
Right. I think government should act as a catalyst for
Absolutely.
entrepreneurs and builders like you. And any, government, is there any difference for domestic players or international players? Like, we should do something to protect domestic players mostly. In terms of that,
I'm a firm believer in free market economics. Okay. So that's something that we don't advocate, and I don't advocate. There's no difference today. In fact, I would say the other thing. There's a lot of incentive available for US companies. Okay. For example, under critical minerals, roughly around $100 billion is available for any project in the US today. Okay. So some countries have become favored nations there. So even if you set up a critical minerals project in, let's say, Australia, you are eligible to get that subsidy. So India should try and do that as long as our other geopolitical interests are not compromised.
Okay. Now, talking about road ahead, what is next for Attero? You talked about, you're going into a lot of things, and you corrected me in the beginning. So in going into advanced materials or what is next?
So future is always very exciting.
Okay.
We are as pumped as day 0 or day 1 for us here.
Okay.
Next is we want to make sure that India becomes a leader in critical minerals in the world. That's the dream that we are living. That's the vision that we want to execute on. And for that, a bunch of work needs to be done, which we are geared up to do.
And any plans of like IPO, going public? Or
Yes, we do plan to go public at the right point in time, hopefully in the next couple of years.
And any milestone before the IPO?
Well, milestone, there are a lot of internal milestones, but some financial, some non-financial. That we'll beat. We're ready even today, but I think just from a timing perspective, another 2 years.
Okay, and like what does winning looks like? In next 5-10 years, like as an ecosystem, as a country, and as a company.
Very broad question.
Yeah,
right?
very broad. So we can talk about layer by layer.
Yeah, let's talk about layer by layer. As a country, let's address that first. As a country, what winning looks like in the next 5 years is that we are more Atmanirbhar on our critical minerals needs, which is extremely necessary for our defense requirements, for our energy requirements, and for our commercial requirements as well, right? Without that, in the current world that we are living in, we are always exposed to external shocks for which we have no control. Whether it is the war that's happening in the Middle East, whether China deciding one day that they not export magnets or critical minerals to the country, or they're telling our firms that whatever we give to you, you make sure you're not sending back to the US. That's like blackmail, right? Or anything else. So as a country, from a policy standpoint and an ecosystem standpoint, winning looks like that we are in control of our own destiny within the next 5 years, to whatever extent we can. If we can reduce the import dependence by at least 50%, I think we have won the race, right? On top of it, if we start exporting, right, and become the critical minerals capital of the world, that is probably what winning will look like in 10 years as a country, okay? As a company, winning for us will be then that we are the major driver of countries winning.
First, we should become Atmanirbhar Bharat, then we should do Make in India for the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
So Attero should be the key driver for making sure that this vision for India succeeds. Then we have won.
Right. And what drives you on day-to-day basis, like, apart from running a business and everything, what is your driving factor?
Well, I enjoy life. Whatever I do with passion, right? So
Okay.
I play tennis, I do half marathons, I do a bunch of stuff.
Okay. And like, the last one, the question is like, is there something that still surprises you about this sector? Like anything that is like, very different from what you've expected, or anything is happening now?
I think at some point in time, everything gets if you abstract it, it's the same thing, right? So from a surprise perspective, I think same. From a sector surprise angle, I don't think any further new nuances there. But obviously, we continue to explore and we continue to remain excited by new things that we're doing.
Okay, great. Great, Nitin. Thank you so much for your time. It
Thank you,
was
Ankit.
really pleasure talking to you, and a lot of things to learn from you. And it's great, like electrical engineer is doing some serious metallurgy.
No, thanks, Ankit. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay, just before ending, like any message for the young entrepreneurs or people like, pursuing PhD, doing R&D in this sector, like, this very evolving sector in India, and in the next 10 years, I think this sector is going to explode with the AV boom.
Yeah.
So if you can give a message to the people.
So see, we are extremely bullish on the sector per se, not because we started early work in this, but we believe the entire AI revolution. Today, there are only two key buzzwords in the world, right? One is AI and the second is critical minerals. So if you're working in any of these two, you're lucky, right? So follow your passion, follow your dream, work hard, and you'll achieve what you set out to achieve. And by the way, enjoy the journey. That's all that I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nitin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the opportunity.